Good evening, everybody. We are back again much quicker than the last time. And so tonight we're working on continuing closing up this workout area a little bit more. Now, it's not just going to be a workout area. Most of it is, because the boss lady, Mary has no space that is just hers where she can get away from everything, get away from the kids. And yes, we love our kids, but every parent knows you need your time. And I get all the time I need out here in my shop, all the alone time I could ever ask for. I know it's an antisocial thing, but that's just me. But anyway, so as I've told you guys many times, this area that we're working on finishing off for winter is her workout space. That is the first area in this building that is going to get actually finished off. Basically, and part of that is selfish motivations. I am moving my reloading stuff out of the house and building it into a corner in here. I don't want to take up a lot of room on her. We're going to take up a few feet of real estate. That's about it. But so in order for me to do that, this room does need to be heated. In the summertime, it's going to need to be cooled. Otherwise, your primers, your powders, and all that stuff, it's just not going to be very good. So anyway, so what we need to do this tonight, we're going to try to get this section closed in. Get a doorway framed out for it. But if you guys remember when we built the timber frame, when I stood these queen post bents, I had big through tenons on all these queen posts, these 8x8 queen posts. Now for the application that I'm using these strainer beams in, that is the connecting beam that goes from queen post to queen post in these second floor bents, I do not need a through tenon for structural stability in any way, shape, or form. It is definitely overkill. I like the looks of them, that's why I put them in there, but it's something that is absolutely not necessary for what I'm doing here. Because you have to remember, like I said throughout the timber frame vlog, when you're building a building, you really have to plan for the stresses that are going to be on those joints. And with these strainer beams, they're going to have more stress being pushed into them from the gambrel roof than they are from the high roof in the middle. So one force kind of negates the other a little bit, and it really makes those big through tenons unnecessary. Now, those big through tenons, they have their place. And you see the old Dutch barns, the huge square barns, you see massive through tenons on those things, just absolutely huge. And there was so much stress on those joints, those tying joints in a Dutch barn, because they are so big. They actually are needed, those big through tenons. But anyway, enough of my yakking. We're going to get to work. I've got to trim that. Through tenon flush with the queen post. And we're going to start framing it out and carrying on. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you on the other side of it. Well, you guys aren't getting a lot of camera creativity these days. It's just the way it is. It'll be nice when we wire this upstairs and I have real outlets and real light switches and real lights. That will be nice. Of course, I guess any light that gives you light is a real light, I suppose, but you guys know what I'm saying. I gotta tell you guys, the switch to Milwaukee was probably one of the best tool decisions I've ever made. What a difference for quality and power. I'm just very impressed. What an improvement over what I was using. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. Getting there. I'd probably get it done a little quicker if I'd spend less time chugging on coffee and actually working, but she's coming along. Every tool pouch, every tool belt I've ever carried or ever worn, I've always put a plumb bob in it. This is one of those little forgotten tools that you hardly ever see a carpenter, at least young ones, guys my age and younger, you never see them break one of these out. Everybody's so spoiled with their laser plumb bobs and laser levels and things like that. I don't even know if a lot of modern carpenters really know how to use some of this old stuff. I mean, plumb bobs are about as old world technology as it gets, but it's also about as accurate as it gets also. And it's a little slower to use than a laser, something like this, or something like that. But this guy here, this will never fail. It's foolproof. I mean, it'll never fail. Well, when I'm doing studs on going up against a pitch ceiling or something like this, I always lay out my bottom plate, and then I'll just run the plumb bob down to my marks on the bottom plate, and it works so well and it's so accurate. It amazes me. It just amazes me that more people don't use them. I mean, this is going to get you as straight and level as you possibly can be as long as you have the patience to use it right. And I know most of you guys watching, most of you guys know what this is. I don't need to tell you, but it just shocks me that more people don't use it. Like I said, it's just such a good tool. All you gotta do is make your mark and away you go. You know, the old layout tools, you know, your old frame and squares, stuff that we use so much in building this timber frame, they're just so handy. Can you imagine the stuff throughout the centuries and the ages that have been built with these old tools and how perfect some of it came out? It's just amazing. I mean, people a couple thousand years ago, they were really using some crude stuff. And it's always amazed me how nice the old architecture is versus the modern stuff that we have today. It just never seems, it just doesn't have today's stuff doesn't really have much of the same character that stuff a couple hundred years ago had. You look at the buildings, the area where I lived back in the 1850s, you know, the city near us, it was one of the wealthiest cities in the nation. It had more millionaires per capita than anywhere else. And it's neat, you could see the buildings that are left from that era, the amount of detail that went into making them what they were absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the architecture on them, some of the homes of the time through there with the big pillars and colonnades and things like that. It's absolutely amazing. And they did that stuff back then mostly with hand tools. I mean, you had some of your water-powered sawmills, things like that. It's not like they didn't have any type of power tools. When it came to the carpenter on the job site, they didn't have circular saws, they didn't have routers, they didn't have any of that stuff. All they had were hand planes, hand saws, framing squares, and chisels. And it's amazing what they were able to build. It always amazes me. That's why I like the old buildings so much. And that's what I always liked about the timber frame style and things like that. Because it's so old world and it's so old fashioned, and it kind of brings it back to a simpler time. You know, not that they were the best of times, because they certainly weren't. but it does bring you back to a simpler time, and it's kind of neat. I've always kind of liked that. Well, we got one more section framed up tonight. Now, that's not typically how I frame out windows and doors, but seeing as how there's absolutely no load on this, I'm not worried about any sagging door headers or anything like that. The 1-inch boards we're going to put on both sides will actually help a little more structurally. It's not going anywhere. It's solid. It's just going to be fine. So if anybody's curious about that. Normally, if it was in a house or something like that, or something going to be load bearing, you know, we'd do the 2x10 door headers, sandwich them up with plywood in between, things like that. But out here, the frame itself, I've told you guys many times over the course of building the timber frame structure is designed to support itself. The framing members alone are enough to support the structure. That's why you have all the braces and things like that, is to keep any kind of racking from happening. And I can tell you, with the god-awful winds we get here, it does a very nice job in resisting any racking. Nothing, believe it or not, I haven't had anything in here shift that I can tell at all. The joints are about the same as when I put them in. A couple of the very top plate joints, a couple of them that baked in the sun while I was laid up for a while, they kind of spread a little bit, but it didn't change. It actually did not change anything in the building itself. So anyway, as far as the layout tool, the plumb bob, like I said, most of you guys who watch this channel, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but this is more geared for younger people who don't know about these tools and how useful they really are and how cheap they are. You can get a good plumb bob for 10 bucks at your local hardware store. It's going to be one of the most accurate layout tools that you'll ever have in your tool pouch. And I always carry one in my tool pouch when I used to have to wear those things all day long, day in, day out, back when I used to frame houses years ago, probably close to 20 years now. And so it's just something I always carry because it is a very handy thing. And maybe later on down the road when we get if we ever get the wood shop set up, I've been threatening that for how many years now? But every year we get a little bit closer on something. But maybe as we go down a little bit farther down the road here, maybe sometime this winter, I'm not going to make any promises, but if I get the time sometime this winter, we will go over the old layout tools and show how they work and show how accurate they really are. I mean, things like a plumb bob, you're using gravity, and it just works so well. It naturally finds its own level. Same thing with water levels. You know, it's a very old practice. Obviously, a laser transit, things like that. Obviously, they're a lot faster, they're a lot easier to use, and they're pretty accurate as long as nothing's gotten out of whack on them. But a water level, if you don't have a few $100 to spend on a good transit, 10 bucks worth of tubing, you can make a water level as long as you want. And since water always seeks its own level, they're great to use. You can't beat them. Things like that you just can't beat. It's old world stuff. Your old timber frames, you look at the old churches in Europe, the temples in Japan, even the pyramids, that's all that stuff was all made using very old world technology. And I've always found that kind of neat, and I've always wondered why as a people, why we have lost those techniques and those tools. And you know, I know a lot of the modern stuff is a lot easier to use, but you never know. The way this world is, what happens if that's what you're left to use, you know? It's not a bad idea to learn how to use that stuff at least and keep it on hand, because most of that stuff, they still make it today and you can buy them dirt cheap. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Next time out, we'll, I think, get the boards on that wall, get a door made, and then we'll move over to the other side. So you guys have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next one.